Welcome to the Quotive Corner. Today's quote made me laugh out loud the first time I really read it. And then it made me sit back and think, oh, that's actually really good advice. Those two reactions don't always show up together, and when they do, it's usually worth slowing down. To keep your marriage brimming, with love in the loving cup. Whenever you're wrong, admit it. Whenever you're right, shut up. That's Ogden Nash, from a short poem called A Word to Husbands. Nash was an American poet who built an entire career out of compact, witty verse, clever wordplay, irreverent humor, and short poems that managed to pack genuine insight into a handful of lines. He published 19 books of poetry over his career and is remembered as one of America's most beloved humorists. This particular poem is exactly 4 lines long, and somehow those 4 lines have outlived plenty of marriage advice that took entire books to say less. Now, let's talk about why it's funny, and then let's talk about why it's true. The humor is obvious on the surface. It rhymes, it's blunt, and it lands on a punchline, shut up. That gets a laugh precisely because it's the opposite of how marriage advice usually sounds. Most relationship guidance arrives wrapped in soft language. Communicate openly, express your feelings, validate your partner's experience. Nash skips all of that and just tells you, bluntly, to keep your mouth shut sometimes. It's funny because it's true, and because nobody else says it that directly. But underneath the joke is one of the cleanest, most practical pieces of marriage advice you'll find anywhere. And it works because it addresses 2 separate failure modes, one for each line. Whenever you're wrong, admit it. This sounds simple. It is not simple in practice. Admitting you're wrong requires absorbing a small hit to your ego in real time, in front of the person whose opinion of you matters most, often in the middle of a moment when you're already feeling defensive. The instinct for most people runs the other way, toward justification, toward minimizing, toward finding the angle that makes the mistake somebody else's fault too. Genuine, clean admission of fault, without qualifiers, without immediately pivoting to what the other person did, is rare specifically because it's hard. And here's why it matters so much in marriage specifically. Every unadmitted mistake becomes a small deposit of resentment that the other person carries, even if they never say anything about it. They know what happened. They watched you avoid owning it. And over years, those unadmitted small wrongs accumulate into something much larger than any individual incident. A quiet sense that fairness in the relationship is unevenly applied, that one person is held accountable and the other gets a pass. Admitting fault quickly and cleanly isn't just about that one moment. It's a small act of maintenance that keeps the larger structure from slowly destabilizing. Whenever you're right, shut up. This is the harder one and the funnier one, and possibly the more important one. Because being right feels good. It feels like vindication. And the temptation, once you've established that you were right about something, is to make sure everyone knows it. To extend the moment, to remind your partner later, to extract a little extra satisfaction from the fact that you called it and they didn't listen. That impulse is completely human and almost universally corrosive to a relationship. Being right is not the same as winning, and treating it that way is where a lot of marital damage gets done. The person who is right and gracious about it preserves the relationship. The person who is right and makes sure everyone knows it converts a factual victory into a relational loss. Nash's instruction here isn't asking you to pretend you weren't right. It's asking you to recognize that being right doesn't entitle you to anything except the quiet satisfaction of having been correct. Not an audience, not an apology tour, not a moment of triumph at your partner's expense. Put the 2 instructions together and you get something that looks almost too simple to be real advice. Take full ownership of your failures and take none of the credit for your victories. That's a genuinely demanding standard. It asks you to absorb the discomfort in both directions. The discomfort of admitting fault and the discomfort of declining to enjoy being right, for the sake of something larger than your own ego in either direction. And that's really what the poem is about underneath the joke. Ego management, marriage, more than almost any other relationship, puts 2 egos in extremely close, extremely sustained contact. There is no relationship with more opportunities to be wrong, to be right, to keep score, to need to be acknowledged. And the couples who navigate that well aren't the ones who are never wrong or never right. They're the ones who have learned to hold both outcomes lightly, who don't need the wrongness erased through excuses and don't need the rightness celebrated through victory laps. There's a deeper principle hiding in there too. The goal of a disagreement in a healthy marriage isn't to establish who was correct. It's to resolve the actual issue and to keep the relationship intact while doing it. Once you're treating an argument as a contest with a winner and a loser, you've already lost something more important than the argument, because marriage isn't a debate tournament. There's no trophy for being right more often than your spouse. There's only the quality of the life you're building together, and that quality depends far more on how generously you handle being right or wrong than on how often you're either one. Now, the honest counterpoint, because this show doesn't skip it, even in a lighter episode. This advice can be misapplied if taken to an extreme. Always admitting fault, even when you genuinely aren't at fault, isn't humility, it's self-erasure, and it can train a relationship into an unhealthy pattern where one partner absorbs blame habitually just to avoid conflict. And always staying silent when you're right isn't always virtuous either. Sometimes a pattern needs to be named clearly, even if it costs a moment of someone's pride, because silence in the name of grace can also become silence in the name of avoidance. The poem is funny and pointed, not a complete operating manual. The spirit of it, manage your ego, don't keep score, don't turn every disagreement into a referendum on who's smarter, is the part worth keeping. The letter of it shouldn't be followed so literally that you stop being honest. With that balance in mind, Nash's 4 lines hold up remarkably well as a daily practice rather than a one-time lesson. Every disagreement is a fresh opportunity to apply it. Was I wrong here? Say so plainly without padding. Was I right here? Let it go plainly without flourish. Do that consistently for years, and you'll find that the marriage doesn't need grand romantic gestures nearly as much as it needs this: the quiet, repeated discipline of not making every moment about being seen as correct. Nash wrote it as a joke. It works because it's also the truth. Thanks for spending a few minutes here at the Quotive Corner. To everyone who laughed at this one and then felt a little caught, you're not alone. That's basically why it's still being quoted decades later. And as always, wisdom isn't in the quote, it's in the reflection. See you in the next episode.